What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out the Surreal amplification Atomica 100. Let's do it! Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amplifiers, overdrives, guitars, cabs, speakers, pickups. I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into East End or thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that just love amps, we're keeping it simple today, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today we are checking out an amp that I did not know existed until it hit my doorstep. And it is from Surreal Amplification. This is Surreal Amplification's Atomica, which is a pretty obvious nod to being a Cameron Atomica style amplifier. So this is essentially a 100 watt Jose modded Marshall circuit with the Cameron touch added to it. This has some additional switching on the front, and by switching I mean it's got push-pull pots that enact all sorts of different stuff. There's a lot going on inside this amp, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I filmed a video with this thing once already, and I kind of struggled to make it sound good in that video, but I'm plugging into it today and I think it sounds really good. So I don't know if I was doing something wrong the first time, but all of a sudden I seem to have this thing figured out. So on this amp, you have a clean and a crunch channel, and all of the controls on the front are shared between the clean and the crunch, so you will not be able to go from one to the other with different EQ settings. And then on top of that, there is a lead kind of boost type setting on the amp to really kick it into even more compression and more of a saturated gain structure to really take it over the top for that 80s shred type thing. But as of right now, I just have it in the crunch mode, and on the back of this, there's also a feel switch, a two-way feel switch. I honestly don't notice it doing anything at all, to be completely honest. And it says on the Surreal website, there's actually a three-way feel switch now. So maybe something was changed. Maybe the switch was taken out of the circuit for all I know, but it doesn't seem to make any difference, but we'll mess with it anyways. And then on the back, we also have a lead trim control, which really just kind of gives you further control over the gain. So not only do you have gain control on the front, but you've also got all sorts of other switching here. So let's go ahead and dive into this amp, because there seems to be a lot going on. A little bit about Surreal before we start. All I know is that they are a pretty much a one-man operation here in the United States. He builds pretty much everything to custom order, and I believe that he can either add or subtract options to some of his amps if you would like him to. So go down in the description of this video if you want to learn more about Surreal, because I don't know much about them myself, so I'm just gonna let you guys go ahead, click the link below. He's got all of his info and his website. Check it out down there. So for that intro clip, I was using my Balaguer Typhon with the Seymour Duncan distortion in the bridge, and we were going through the M77 Badass Modified Overdrive in order to boost the amp. We're gonna turn that off. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna back this gain all the way down to 9 o'clock, and I'm gonna push it in because we had that gain pot pulled out, which seems to add some clipping into the circuit, make it even more saturated. Now we've got a shape, treble, middle, bass, presence, and resonance, and we are gonna bring all those back to noon, and we are gonna start shaping this tone on this amp. So let's go ahead and do that. We are on the crunch channel. Very bright, very quacky right off the bat. It's just got a lot of top end stringiness to it as I describe it. It does kind of remind me of a plexi when you have a lot of the bright frequencies going if you're plugged into the bright channel. So let's go ahead and immediately let's kind of pump in a little bit more bass and a little bit more mid. Let's pull that treble back and let's add a little bit of gain. Let's bump that up to about 11 o'clock. So even so, bumping the gain that much didn't really seem to make much of a difference. Let's go to 1 o'clock. Okay, so bringing it above that threshold maybe kind of pulled a bright cap from the circuit because it immediately got a little bit darker and a little bit seemingly quieter. So I'm actually gonna bump this volume just a tad. All right, so it does that classic rock thing kind of well. Let's add a little bit of presence, a little bit of resonance. All right, so finally, let's push that gain up to like 3 o'clock. Let's really get this thing kind of pushed a little bit and see how it sounds. Pushing the gain that high definitely really chops a lot of that high end off. Let's go all the way up. So pushing it that high, we've got a ton of low end response. Let's push this bass back. Let's bump the mids. Let's bump the treble. Still pretty fat sounding. Let's bump the bass back. Let's get even more mids, more treble. Let's add a little presence too. So with that being said, the EQ does seem to make a pretty drastic difference. Unlike a typical Marshall circuit where the EQ controls do next to nothing, on here they seem to make a pretty big difference. So with that being said, I'm gonna pull that gain back to noon and we're gonna pop the gain switch out, which seems to add some diode clipping into the circuit, which makes it more saturated, but still kind of remain a little bit tighter and not be so bloated when you push the gain. All right, so we are significantly brighter now. Let's pull that bass back up. Let's pull the mids and the treble back a little bit. It's a really nice modded Marshall sounding circuit. Lots of mids coming through. It's defined. It's got kind of a nice plexi chime to it. Sounds pretty good to me. All right, so that sounds good. Let's push that gain again. Let's push it up to about 2 o'clock. All right, and finally, let's get it up to about 4 o'clock. Overall, not a ton of gain, and it really, again, once you start to push it, even with that gain pot pulled out, it just adds a little bit too much low mid bloat and kind of chops some of the highs off. So we can also pull the crunch volume out. And just by doing that, as you can see, that seems to add some sort of, maybe that's the diode clipping. Again, I didn't really research the amp too much. It was a little bit unclear of what did what on the website, so I'm kind of just going by ear here. But let's go ahead and get that volume up so we can actually hear what's going on. All right, so let's pull that gain back and get it into more of a reasonable level, because that just immediately went into super high gain territory by pulling that clean volume pot out. Pretty tight on its own. It seems like there is a good bit of noise going on. We're gonna need some presence. We're gonna need some treble, and let's bump the bass and resonance as well. Sounds pretty good to me, but it is pretty noisy in this setting. I'm not sure exactly what's going on inside the amp. It's adding a lot of gain and a lot of compression. Again, it sounds good, but you can definitely tell that it's gonna be noisy unless you have a really tight gate going on. So this amp at time can be a little bit tough to dial the top end in right where you want it. It seems like it walks a fine line between being a little too muffled and a little too bright. So you really have to fine tune the high end to get it the way that you want it. But once you do, it sounds pretty good. Still a little bit of weird upper mid thing going on and a little bit of harsh treble. Let's back that presence down just a tad. Let's add a little bit more treble on the amp. Okay, so there also seems to be quite a bit of compression, and it just, I don't know, not my favorite. Let's turn the slope up on this. If you turn it to the left, it kind of makes it more modern, more low mid focused with more high end. If you turn it to the right, it kind of seems to focus on the mids a little bit more. So let's turn it just above noon. All right, so now we have to adjust that treble again because it's pretty muffled. Yeah, those treble frequencies are harsh. So when you have this clean or crunch volume pulled out, the compression and the harshness can be a little bit tough to take. So we're gonna go back to the regular crunch. We're gonna put that back in. Pretty significant difference in volume there. Let's pull that presence and treble back. Gain up a decent amount. Let's kick in that Boss SD1 in front and see how this thing handles a boost. All right, so as you guys can hear, I am struggling with that top end a little bit. That was the issue that I had the last time I tried to make a video for this amp. It's just really hard to balance out between being harsh and being muffled. But to be honest, I kind of have the same issue with some Friedman amps with where the presence pot, where it affects in the frequency spectrum, seems to be a little bit lower in the frequencies than say something like a 5150 or a Mesa dual rectifier. So it's just not what my ear is used to. I like that top end sizzle. This amp doesn't quite have it, and that's okay. You guys may love that. For me personally, it's a personal thing. I don't. I struggle with that top end a little bit, but overall, the tone of the amp sounds good. I think that sounds pretty good. We're gonna push the gain just a little bit more and add a little bit more low end in with the bass and the resonance. Overall, I like the tone of the amp. Like I said, there's just a little something in the highs that I feel like the amp could benefit from. But yeah. I just turned the M77 on and I think that sounds way better personally. Just to show you, I haven't really messed with the shape all that much, so I apologize. Let's push the shape down to about 11 o'clock. Really makes it more modern sounding with a lot more top end. Let's push it down even more. Or I'm sorry, it's slope. I've been calling it the shape the whole time. This is a slope knob. Whew, that's really tough on the ears. Let's back that treble and the presence back down. All right, so I definitely like it with the slope, definitely around 1 o'clock, much more. It's way more full and just angry sounding in my opinion. Let's get that presence and treble back up. That is just a massive modern Marshall tone. That sounds really good to me. So let's try the lead real quick. I'm gonna kick the lead switch on, and we have a different volume for that. All right, so the lead does sound a little bit more compressed. Let's get a little bit more treble, pull some mids out, and a little bit more presence. It's just super compressed. It screams for the lead thing. I totally understand the point of the switch if you're really doing a lot of solos and a lot of lead shredding and stuff like that. It's going to give you all the compression and the gain that you're going to need for that and sound great doing it. So last but not least, let's go back into the crunch setting and I'm going to try an EMG guitar. We're going to call it a day. All right guys, I have my Solar E 2.6C with an EMG 85 at the bridge. Let's see how this thing reacts to some active pickups. I think that sounds great. Personally, I think both guitars sound great. I think the amp sounds really good. Definitely a awesome take on a really bad grammar. Definitely an awesome take on a modded Marshall platform. I think this thing is really cool. There are definitely some more switches in here that I just don't know what they do. They're push-pull pots. I didn't notice any differences in them. I forgot to hit the switch on the back, but the feel switch, guys, it does not do anything. I could not hear anything at all from it. So there are some options on here that I haven't explored because I don't know the amp well enough. But from what I was able to explore, I think this thing sounds awesome. From their website, it looks like these are 1,800 bucks new and there's only a few week wait time on them. So again, hit up Surreal if this is something that you're interested in. I'll put a link down below in the comments. I have not spoken to the man and I have no affiliation with him. I'm just telling you guys where to go if you're interested. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. What did you think? Let me know down in the comments as always. Really curious to see how it sounded on your end and what you guys heard that I may not have heard here in the room. Leave your comments and I'll be sure to meet you down there to chat about it. If you want to support the channel, go down in the description of this video and click check out my support links. There is a Sweetwater affiliate link. You click that link, get yourself something nice from the fine folks at Sweetwater. I get a kickback, it costs you nothing extra, and it greatly helps this channel move forward. Or you could consider becoming one of these fantastic people here by joining my Patreon community and supporting the channel that way. I will love you forever, whether you want me to or not. And finally, consider becoming a member of the Belligerent Amateur community by joining my Discord server and my Facebook group down below in the description. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you guys next time.